crazy Russian dad. And today, today I want to tell you about about my grandmother. I mean, I've always been blessed with great people surrounding me. My parents, relatives, friends, grandparents, and so today, I don't know why, but I was remembering my grandmother. She passed away, unfortunately, a few years ago. Not that many, but she passed away at a ripe old age, as they say, of 101. And she was a very interesting woman, right? I mean, how do you live to... I don't know anybody else who lived close in my circle who lived that long, over 100 years. And it's interesting. I mean, by the way, when we were leaving Russia, she was 81, okay, and so sort of she was old, she was considered I guess elderly, right? And so people said, Rochele probably won't even make it over the big pond, who knows? Like, certainly that's what doctor said. Well, guess what, she did make it over the big pond, and she lived a rich, happy life for another 2 decades and more. Incredible, just incredible. How do you live over 100 years? And she had an amazing life. Like, by the way, I was not a good grandson, not as good as I should have been. I didn't call as often, I didn't visit her, but when I would visit, I mean, she was your typical Jewish grandmother, right? She was give me cookies and, I don't know, snacks, and eat this, and here's a kotletka, which is sort of a cutlet, a meatball, right? And she would want to feed you. Lived by herself, by the way, in a little apartment here in America, you know, to the last day of her life, by herself. Amazing. Whenever she would get sick, which was not too often, she would enter hospital and they would check the age, and like 99, and so all the nurses are saying, well, of course, like, what do you expect? But I always told them, like, listen, don't count this one out. This one was absolutely going home on her 2 feet, and she always did. Amazing. And she had such a hard life. You would think, oh, maybe she was like pampered, some countess of whatever, and she had an easy life. No, she had a hard life. Like, I would visit her with my little problems, like, well, somebody looked at me funny at work, but she would listen patiently, and then she would tell me, well, let me tell you a couple of stories. And she lived through siege of Leningrad. You know, the city was encircled. There was a blockade in Russia by the Nazis in 1940s, in the Second World War. And she lived through the 900 days of that. They had 150 grams of bread. You know, she showed me this much. You look it up in whatever, some history book. I'm not going to tell the whole story, but she's lived through that, okay? And then just the kind of a person she was. Incredible story. She once, I mean, people were dying left and right in the city. I mean, my grandfather, her husband, my father's father, told me stories that people would just die on the streets. There was cannibalism, there was horrible stuff. People ate dogs and cats, and they were all gone. Anyhow, so once my grandfather finds on the street, finds a bag, a purse, I think woman's purse. What does it contain? The purse contains literally diamonds and jewelry and just gold, just riches beyond measure, which is philosophical for a moment. They were not riches. Riches were bread at the time. But she finds this fortune, basically. What does she do? You'd think, I surely would put at least something in my pocket, but not her. She takes this and takes it to the authorities. I mean, she was the most honest person I have ever known in my life. I mean, just incredible woman. The other story she would always tell is how the city was in ruins. You know, bombardment every night. Horrible, horrible. You'd think that people stopped living. No. She said they went to a concert. Apparently, I don't know who, but there was a classical music concert. And she went with her friend, and then it was very late. It was when it finished, I don't know, at midnight. You had to, no transportation. You walked, and so minus 30 centigrade. So she said, oh, I will. She went with friend, and she told her friend, I will stay with you tonight. When she came home, apparently the bomb, anyway, her house, her apartment was gone because the bomb hit directly there. She was protected. Don't know why. It's funny. We would always ask her, and certainly the children, well, babushka, how do you live that long? What is your secret to your longevity? I remember we had her 100th birthday at my parents' place. My mother made the party, dinner, and we had my grandmother, who was 100, and my younger boy who was 5, so 95-year difference. Incredible just to see those 4 generations there, right? And she was always like, well, I don't know what, I ate well. They would make us, she would say, my mother made us all a bowl of corn or something. Of course, she had 8 or 7 brothers and sisters. They were all gone, so no, I don't think it was the corn. But she won some kind of a lottery. She was a very special woman. Never got into anybody's business. Always listened. Never really criticized. Never gossiped. Just sort of, I think she was special. She was a kind, quiet person, but very strong too. She had principles, and she was incredibly honest. And the other stories were like she was born in 1909, right? And so she said, whenever I would complain about little problems, she told me once how she, at the time in 1920 something, it was already Soviet Union, but they had in Ukraine where they lived, I think they had only 10 years grasp on power, and so whoever the local bad guys, I forget all the names, but they would come on the horses and swords or whatever, shashki, swords, I don't know the word in English, but they would come. She said they came one night, they were looking for Jews, and they would kill them. They would just hack them to death with their swords, right? And so she said the local Ukrainian or Russian, whatever, woman said, come. She told to my grandmother's mother, Leah, that's her name, hide in my stack of hay, and so they had to hide deep. And so her mother grabbed my grandmother, who was 10 or 9 at the time, or 12, and her younger brother, and they hid in the haystack. But the guys were prodding it with their weapons, looking for Jews, right? And so that was kind of she came to death so many times. Amazing, just amazing. And then also my father, he's a much better son than I, and for the last decade or so, I think he became her personal doctor in some way. I mean, he's not a doctor, by the way, he's not a physician, he's an engineer who turned businessman, whatever, but they were so close, and he got so good at understanding her conditions. He would read on the internet, and then he understood the medicine, etc. So I think he even got into the habit of calling whenever she would have a medical test. He would call. He worked at some place, I forget, the APA or BPA Consulting or something. He would call the doctor's office and said, please fax me the results of the test. And they would say, well, who is this? And he would say, well, I'm calling from BGA Consulting. And of course they were dumb enough, they would fax him the results. He would read the results. He got so good he could understand the results. The man doesn't have medical degree. He's much smarter than me, as I said, and a better son. Anyhow, so he kept her. Not that she was very sick. Interesting, and she also very touching. She had a brother Uncle Oskar. That's all I knew. I saw the man once. He came to St. Petersburg to wish us goodbye once when we were leaving Russia. Well, he was also a special guy. I mean, he was like her, very strong. All I knew that he lived somewhere still in the Ukraine near Chernobyl, where nuclear reactor blew up, and they would write letters to each other. This is before email, right? They actually wrote physical letters. He was still there somewhere in wherever that was in the Ukraine, and she was here, and she would write to him. Oskar, oh yeah, this Oscar guy. I mean, he was retired, and he was alone already by then. Nobody was supporting him, and so he would still. I think he went fishing a lot, to get food. He was very poor. He had his pension, but very little money from the government, and so to survive, he also grew vegetables and went fishing. And she would always tell me, I told Askar, I told him not to fish because that stupid fish, I mean, it's all too close to the nuclear reactor. But nothing got to Askar. I mean, he was, and then I learned, I mean, just sort of, that was how they were. I mean, he died how he lived. He, apparently, the story, I learned it from my father. Sorry, I digress, but just to show you the kind of family they were. He felt pain in his heart. He realized that he was not feeling well, and he called whatever the equivalent of 911 in Russia. And before they came, he stopped by the neighbor. He knocked on the door. It's a true story. He knocked on the door of his neighbor. Sorry, I think I'm tearing up here. And he told the neighbor that, listen, I don't feel well. I called 911 for myself. I don't think I'm coming back. I think this is it. And so take, take whatever's left. I mean, that's how. I didn't even know the guy. I'm crying now. Sorry guys, I may need to edit this. Anyhow, so that's how he died. I wasn't even that close to him. Sorry. Whew. Sorry guys. But my grandmother, I mean, she died also how she lived very quietly. She called my father, very similar, on the phone, and said, I'm not feeling well, but I'm okay, you stay at work. Sorry. Whew. But he didn't stay at work. He came and she was already gone. Sorry. Sorry about that, you guys. Well, it's life, right? Anyway, I should have been a better grandson. If you have grandparents, go see them, tell them you love them. If you don't, maybe you can go visit, you know, their cemetery. Anyway, that's sorry. That's the story of my grandmother. I felt moved to share it with you today. I hope you liked it. Okay, good night.